Tucker Carlson went on Joe Rogan's podcast recently, and they had an interesting and kind of sloppy debate regarding evolution and adaptation. Check this out.
Cares about you, you're important to the people
but
around you.
If we don't think people are important, then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
It's not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if there is this constant, I don't know, but it's visible. Like, you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution as articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true. Right?
In what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not.
There's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's tons of record of adaptation, and you see it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all zero, that people evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all. And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution, because the theory of adaptation is obviously true. But Darwin's theory's totally, that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later. No, we have not found that at all.
Now, this sounds pretty crazy on its face if you're not really plugged into this stuff. And again, it's Tucker Carlson. He's like a news guy saying this. So again, it sounds kind of crazy. But I'm about to show you in a second here, he's actually talking about something that's really real. And he's talking about something that Joe Rogan has heard before.
And I can't even guess. I mean, I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
God created people, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
it's not a new idea.
They didn't have computers. They didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand so little that we're actually sitting here allowing a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to flirt with the extinction of mankind.
So that ending there is a little funny because the conversation already is so quickly going off of the rails there, and you don't really need to see more of that because the conversation does kind of go off of the rails there. But what the end of the debate is that it is, well, are we smarter today than ever before? And really, the answer to that question is kind of complicated because in some ways, yes, and in other ways, no, right? We're doing some really dumb things today that society never was dumb enough to do before. But we are doing some really dumb things today as a society. But are we more technologically advanced than ever before and have more knowledge than ever before? As far as just black and white, X's and O's knowledge, yeah, the answer is yes, but they're operating on different levels here. Tucker's talking about one thing and Joe Rogan's talking about something else. But I love Tucker. He's like, I believe in God, which is like the oldest idea ever. Everyone believes. Everyone has always believed in God. It's only up until recently when society became dumb that we stopped believing in God. And I can see why that's a compelling argument for him, but I can also see why that's not a compelling argument for a lot of people who are skeptical about God. I said before that Tucker is actually talking about something that's real here, and Joe Rogan has been told this very thing on his podcast before, but he does so many podcasts, of course he doesn't remember. Check this out. This is from back when Joe Rogan had Stephen C. Meyer on his podcast. Check out how he gives Joe Rogan what is clearly new information to him regarding neo-evolution or Darwinism.
Do you believe in evolution?
I believe in I believe in microevolution. I believe that there are real evolutionary processes. I'm skeptical about what's called universal common descent, the idea that all living forms have evolved from one single common ancestor. I'm profoundly skeptical about chemical evolution, the idea that the non-living chemicals in a prebiotic ocean or prebiotic soup arrange themselves to form the first living cell. And I'm also skeptical about the creative power of the mutation selection mechanism, which, as it happens, so are many leading evolutionary biologists today. I attended a conference in 2016 at convened by the Royal Society in London, Royal Society being the oldest and most august scientific body in the world. And it was convened by a group of evolutionary biologists who were essentially dissatisfied with neo-Darwinism, the standard textbook theory that we learn in all high school and college textbooks. And many of them were saying we need a new theory of evolution. The first talk at that conference was given by Gerd Müller, a prominent Austrian evolutionary biologist, and he simply enumerated the 5 major, what he called explanatory deficits of neo-Darwinism. And his basic perspective was the mutation selection mechanism does a good job of optimizing or modifying pre-existing forms. It can generate small-scale variation, but it does a very poor job of explaining the origin of those forms. Think about, for example, the Darwin's finch beaks. Great job of explaining how variations in weather patterns result in changes in the shape and structure of the finch beaks. But that mechanism turns out not to do a good job of explaining the origin of birds or other major animal groups in the first place. So modification, yes. Innovation, no.
And he goes on to give a much longer explanation of this. Check it out, the podcast. This is about, if you want to check it out, 12 or 13 minutes and 28 seconds into the podcast. Goes on a much longer explanation. Joe Rogan kind of gets lost in the whole conversation and harkens back to something that they talked about way earlier. But what he says essentially is that what Darwin did was not really discover the origin of species. What he did was actually look at the adaptation of species. And that's not something that we really debate at all. Whether Christian or non-Christian people all obviously can see and recognize right now today this belief in microevolution, but not macroevolution. That's typically the way that it's laid out here. So Joe Rogan has heard this before, and he's clearly forgotten that, again, some of the world's leading evolutionary biologists, many of the world's leading evolutionary biologists are beginning to extremely doubt, if not reject, the original idea of Darwinism as it was in the very beginning, even until today. They're rejecting that idea, and they say that it's not satisfactory, and it's not reasonable, and it's not logical. It doesn't adequately explain the origin of species, which is what Darwin's whole thing was. But let me know what you think. Were you surprised that Tucker Carlson actually knew this? Do you think that this is correct or not? Is there a good response to this that I need to know about and I need to hear about? Please let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and support on Patreon. The link is in the description below. But let me know what you think. God bless you. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.